Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hi everyone.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy 2024. Came so
Yeah,
quickly. Cool. Just playing with my screen a little bit to find the right process. Um, okay, can everybody see my screen?
Sure can.
And yes, I have the right date, January 3rd. Yeah, feel free to add to the agenda as we go through the PR actions, PR agenda items. So we'll start with the PR list, just to get a quick status. 1209, the Dev Helm charts for publishing workflow. Akash, is that one ready?
Yeah, that one's ready to go. Not sure if we've talked about this yet, but I can give a quick review for folks who haven't taken a look at it. So this one is to kind of close the loop on our dev asset publishing workflow. Previously, we had a release pipeline which we would use to publish our production images as well as our dev images in the same GitHub workflow. Which wasn't ideal because you can accidentally kick off a release workflow from the same GitHub action. So what I've done is I've removed the dev publishing part from that release workflow. So the release workflow is now completely separate. And then now there's a separate dev publishing workflow, which includes the existing CRD image as well as the Ratify image. But it also now publishes a dev Helm chart that's paired to the released dev images too. So now if you want to test out Ratify with the latest bits from the most recent dev build, you don't need to clone Ratify and then use the chart on the main branch. You can kind of just use the dev Helm file, which points to the Helm chart.
Dev build.
Yeah, the dev built Helm chart. So now, like, let's say we just merged a new feature to the main branch, like the SBOM verifier, like we did, and folks want to test it out immediately. We can kind of just manually kick off a build or wait for the weekly build that comes out, and then you just do Helm file sync, and then you provide it the URL to this dev.helm file GitHub link, and then it'll just pull from the latest bits from that dev build. So now it makes it very easy to test these stage changes before we had to do a lot of manual stuff. So hopefully this now helps folks kind of test changes that just merged to main branch.
Akash, is it worth pointing to the file with the commands here? So
Yes.
before it was updating dev helm file.yaml.
Yeah, I can add the actual command that you can run. I thought I had added that somewhere. Maybe I missed that. So I can add the command that you'd run now to point to the dev.helm
Latest.
file. Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's actually just one line command. There's no you don't have to do any of these replacement of these
Replacements. Yep.
values or anything or figure out what tag to use because now it's pointing to a rolling tag.
Latest.
Yeah, latest. So
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for this, Akash. Any questions before we move on? Cool. Next one, 1217. Yeah, I think, Akash, there was a little bit of discussion on the thread about the config file doesn't have the type property, but I just have the name property. Did we reach any conclusion or action item?
Yeah, so I think based off of Binbin's last comment, it definitely is right that in the CLI config we don't have the type field provided because it's just kind of a duplicate of the name field, which is totally fine. But on the other end, when we produce our verifier report, in order to have consistency with the Rego templates, we should still output a type field that's filled with the same value as the name field. That way, when you write your Rego, you can just check that the type field matches whatever your verifier name that you want to see is. And that same Rego template can be used either in Kubernetes or it can be used in your CLI application of it. So what I've done here is I've made a small change to the external plugin implementations. So instead of the default value of the verifier type being just an empty string, it's going to default to the name that you've specified for the external plugin, unless you've kind of manually in the config defined a different type property that's different from the name property. But if you haven't defined a type property, then it'll just default back to the name property.
Got it. So that's included in this change already.
Yes, yeah.
And all the templates being updated to check the type instead of the name. I think I saw that change being
Yes.
pushed yesterday.
Yep.
Yep, that makes sense. I think it is a long-term goal that to maintain parity between the CLI experience and the Kubernetes experience. So whatever I think in future features, we should always check back and be like, what is the CLI experience? Does it behave the same way? And is the options also exposed through the command line interface?
Yeah, totally agree.
So today, can the CLI use the Rego policy?
Yes, it can actually. You can you would have to specify in the config JSON that you're using the config the Rego policy provider, and then you pass in the file path to the Rego template that you've written, and then it actually will work. We would need to, in a future to do would be to kind of improve the output experience. Right now, the JSON just outputs that large verifier report with the top level is success matching to the overall result. But maybe we can consider making it a little bit more, easier to determine, okay, this was the final result that corresponds to this list of verifier reports. So it's a little bit more clear that way. But these are all kind of like CLI user experience upgrades that we will probably need to invest in maybe in the coming months.
Yeah, maybe we should have like a tracking item for, bring CLI experience to parity, and then we can list all the items that we need to tackle.
Sure. Yeah, I can make that umbrella issue and then we can kind of add to it.
Just add to it. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. With the next pull request, 1223.
Oh, this is my PR. So I have just received comments from Binbin, and we have part, as you may see, like 6982235. We have already also the test. I just update main branch, and the new CI is running. Yeah, it's ready for review.
Sounds great. It's very high code coverage. Good to see. Thank you, Juncheng. Next one is 1238. This one is still in draft. Akash, are you hoping to merge this week?
Yes, yeah. So thanks to you for taking a look. I'll incorporate some of the changes that you had recommended. But for the most part, I think this PR is addressing most of the changes that I'll get to in this one. I know there's one more in the issue that you had filed, Yi. There's that issue with the refers not found error code not being very helpful in determining that a vulnerability report does not exist. I'm thinking of addressing that probably in a follow-up PR because that one is not directly related only to the vulnerability report verifier. It's more of a generic executor issue with when you invoke other plugins, how you would give a more descriptive error. It's also an issue that's isolated to the config policy provider currently. So that's why I was having some of those discussions earlier this week with some folks about when are we going to switch to using by default the Rego policy provider, because then that error actually won't be outputted. So it's also related to that, but I'll address that in a follow-up PR.
Thank you, Akash. Let us know if you need any reviews.
Sounds good. Thanks.
1244, I've been working on adding the plugin validation on the reconcile in the reconcile loop. So then the user don't apply like a non-existent plugin. And then later on verification realize that plugin is not there or the version is incompatible. So I'm still going through some tests and I'm hoping to walk through this PR next Monday. Oh, sorry, next Tuesday, Monday, if it's ready. But currently it's still in progress. I see a question in the chat. Oh, sorry. Yeah, a question from Feynman to Akash. How can user use the latest dev Helm chart for Ratify? Should we follow this release MD?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the recommended way is going to be using the dev Helm file. So like we were discussing before, I'll add the sample command that you can run in order to test with the latest Helm chart. If you didn't want to use the Helm file, I can also add a little blurb about what you would need to do to point Helm to the published version of the Helm chart, because we publish the Helm chart as a OCI artifact on the GHCR registry. So you have to kind of specify that you're going to pull from a registry and give it the OCI : / prefix as well. But I can add both of those sections so there's some more clarity there.
Yeah, has this steps being documented anywhere? I actually just saw the documents updated in the release process.
Yeah, I'll add that to the contributing .md file.
Should it be in the README? You know, for some users who wanna get a try of the latest build, maybe they are not following the contributing guide. I'm thinking maybe put these steps in the README would be much better, which would be much visible, I mean.
Feynman, I think for quick try scenarios, the quick start steps would be okay. That points to the latest stable version, whereas the dev builds, they can be a bit unstable. It's mainly for contributors to get the weekly build and try out the latest feature. Not even try out the latest features. It's more like, let's see if Bin merged a change that I kind of depend on and I really want to test it out. It's kind of like testing bits that's in between releases.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what we can do is to add those steps into the contributing guide and just mention or link that part in the README, so people will be aware of those steps, the dev build from the README, but those detailed steps can be documented in the contributing guide. And I agree with you, Suzanne. That should be the majority of the contributors who wanna take a quick verification of the latest build.
Yeah, sounds good. Akash, the README file, the quick start steps, that's on the website, right?
Yeah, so that's the other consideration. Do we want to add this like as the footnote to the quick start guide on the website, or because the current README doesn't actually have any steps for installation, because we just point the user, I think, to the website now. But I can take a quick look.
Yeah, Feynman, do you feel we should add it to the repository README or the website README or both?
Either website or README are fine. I think we can add to the website. The purpose is to let not only contributors, maybe some users who wanna try the latest features that we added to the main branch.
Sounds
Sure.
good. And maybe we'll convert the users to contributors. Encourage
Correct.
them to.
Correct.
Sounds good. So here's what I'll do. I'll add a little footnote on the website's quick start page and point it back to the contributing down.
Yeah. I think the major steps should be documented in the contributing guide. Then we can add a PR in the Ratify website. Just direct to the contributing guide that there's a latest build that you can use to verify the latest feature that we added to the main branch.
Okay, makes sense. Just one thing to note is that the dev builds are still on the weekly schedule, so every Sunday morning they get made. But there is also a workflow dispatch trigger. So if there is a feature that's kind of high in demand that folks really want to try, then we can just kick off a manual dev build release. But the automated part is not tied to every time PR merges to main branch, because that just produced way too many builds.
Yeah. I think weekly build sounds good. I think this sequence is also valid for most of the cases.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Feynman and Akash. For the web repository, we just have one PR open. Feynman, you've left a comment on the version of the plugin. So I've just updated the verifier description for version to be like it defaults to 1.0.0, and the version will be validated against the supported plugin version. And an example of the cosign verifier version that I've pointed to the main branch. Do you think this comment is good enough for the customer to understand if they need to specify the version? So the version is on line 81. So we don't have, like reading the code, the customer would have there's some assumed knowledge, like context information that they would need to parse out, okay, this is actually the current version of the plugin, and this array lists the supported version of the external plugin. Oh, I'm trying to get to your comment, Feynman. Struggling with the Zoom bar.
Yeah. It seems users need to take a look at the code, then they should be able to know what version that they can fill out in this field.
Yeah, and all our plugins kind of start with 1.0.0, and if they're using the default, then usually they don't need to specify it. That's why it's optional. So Feynman, are you happy for me to resolve this comment?
Why not point to the plugin repos release page? In general, release page will have all available tags or releases that they can choose. Pointing.
Yep. Do
to
you
the
have
code.
yeah, so you think pointing to the website is better, right? I'm just trying to think if we have like a link. So let's say if I want to use the cosine plugin and I'll come here and I'll look at the external plugin. And for cosine, we don't list what's the current version of the plugin. Maybe we should. Oh, sorry, it is there, version 1.1.
That is the version of Ratify instead
Yeah,
of cosine.
is it? They happen to be the same, so I don't really know. So for
So
now, yeah,
my
go ahead.
suggestion, so sorry for bother you. My suggestion is that maybe we can have separate lists for those available external plugins, such as create a section for cosine plugin and list all available versions in the web page or in the comment of the version along the version field.
Is just a quick question. Is verifier a page or is it just a tab? Like if you just
I
click
think it's
on
a folder.
a folder. So one idea that other projects have used is they take that page and they make it kind of like an index, right? So that you could list all
Yep,
the plugins and then their version and supported, and just kind of have a
yep,
table under verifier,
yep,
and then you could point there for all plugins, all verifier plugins, and if there are different external ones, there could be a landing page that you can navigate to. So that way you can kind of see all of them in one snapshot and not have to look,
yep.
okay, well, what's SBOM's version? What's so on and so forth.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Josh. Would this table be manually maintained? Like, would it pull the latest version from somewhere, or every time you have to manually update it?
It'd probably be easiest just to manually update it, especially if the versions don't change very often.
Mm,
But you could, I mean, you could get crafty and make it part of the workflow to update that with the plugin if it gets released or something. But I think to start, and depending on how infrequent or frequent those get changed, I would just do a static
yep,
table.
sounds good. So for the verifiers, we should have a index with a table of like maybe the verifier name, description, like a short description, and the current supported version.
Yeah, I would just put the same information that you had on that line that you pulled up. What was it, 88, where that information's being put into the skeleton where it's the version, the supported version. So instead of having to interpolate like, oh, this array of strings is the supported versions, you could just say
Yep,
supported, and then they can map it like, oh, I've seen that before. That means supported versions when they go to dive in the code, if they do
yep,
so.
yep, sounds good. I can include this as a part of this PR, I think. Yep, I'll be able to push an update. Cool. I think that's the only PR we have on the web repository. Anything else that people want to share web related? I saw Sajay just joined. Happy New Year, Sajay. So we've just finished going through all our PRs, going back to the agenda. Thanks for adding that item, Josh.
Yeah, no problem. I could speak to it if you want.
Yeah, would you like me to open up the link?
Oh, that's okay. It's more of a pose question, and then I can kind of show what I've got working. So
Yeah.
to start, I just wanted to know if anybody has any known messages that when they were working with the plugin, that they expected to return. That way I have some kind of like real world errors or messages. So right now, as it stands, whenever the plugin is executed, basically the only thing that's allowed to be returned from standard in or standard out is the JSON that's being passed from the plugin back to the executor. And if you add anything to standard out, Ratify can't parse it, and so it errors there. So that would kind of kill the plugin experience. And then for the errors, any errors that are passed in the plugin or returned in the plugin that don't terminate, they just get ignored. And so I'm wondering if there are any of those errors that you would have expected to see that got kind of eaten by the plugin, if there's any examples that people have. And don't need to be put on the spot. You can just send me a message in Slack or a DM somewhere and kind of send me those scenarios. So then I guess the next little agenda, if we have time, is I kind of wanted to walk through what I've got currently and just see how that lands to everybody from what I'm thinking. So I've got the errors working where I'm able to take the standard error from the plugin and then use the buffer IO package to read it line by line. And I'm breaking out the errors so that way I can return them from the main execute.go, the one that executes the plugin, line by line, and then I can use logrust to say, hey, this was an informational, display informational, and I'm using a kind of a case statement or a switch statement to determine that. So the errors in the plugin will have to be kind of prefixed with debug or informational, just like logrust would inside the plugin. And let me see if I can pull up the Slack message so people can see what it looks like.
Josh, would you like me to make you the host so you can share the
Oh,
screen
sure, yeah.
or the process?
Yeah, I can just dive right in.
Yeah, I can do that. And Sajay just posted a message that he's not able to unmute. No problem, Sajay. If you have anything you want to share, just type it in the chat. We'll monitor that too.
Thanks. No, it got fixed. Zoom had a
Oh,
dial.
okay. Okay, Josh, I've made you the host now.
Okay. Oh, now I have all the power. Let's see here. Where now where's the screen share button?
It's like a green button.
Oh, it's the green
It's
one.
like,
I should have looked.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always kind of
Fantastic.
ignore the highlighted one, so I always have trouble finding it
Okay.
too.
Let's see here. It should be
And you can
red.
just share the process.
Yeah, I'm trying to find which one's my. There we go. Tmux. Share. So there's probably a lot going on here. Let me make this a little bit better here. Am I in the right one? There we go. So that's what it should do. So let's focus in on that. Oops. There we go. Oh, that's why. I'm in Vim and I have caps lock on. So shame on me. There we go. So I'll focus on this one. This is what it looks like, just to give you an idea. So before the changes that I made, these messages here would just get swallowed. They wouldn't actually be returned from the plugin, because the only thing that was allowed was like a terminating error or the JSON payload that's coming from standard out. So what I did was I created a little reader in there that goes line by line. And so what I've done is added this little prefix to it where it says, hey, this came from the plugin, and this is written in the execute xe.go, and I'll show that in a second. So there's this warning that came from Go, the way that the plugin was compiled. And then here are some messages that I put in the plugin to be returned back. And so hopefully what this is able to do is give us some better information coming from the plugin so that the authors of the plugins, be us or other people, can return different types of information to give us a better insight into what's actually happening inside that execution. Because it's compiled and external to it, we can't even use a debugger to go into that particular workflow if we're trying to figure that out. So hopefully this will improve that experience. But essentially what I've tried to do is enable kind of the most common logging types where they're warning, informational, and debug. And I prefix it with this, and then I just parse out the message that came from standard in line by line. And I'm working on that same thing for the standard out, but I haven't quite got there. So that's kind of what it looks like. That's the experience that you would get from the development perspective. What you would need to do in the plugin. So if we look up, I think I'm in the sample here. What you would do, right now I'm just using fumped fprint and then specifying standard error. So I'm only passing using the standard error to parse these messages. By default, Logrus uses standard error for any message that it logs, but people could do standard out, and so I'll have to deal with that too. But essentially, this is what you would do. And so to make it look pretty, this would kind of be the the thing that I have in question here is to require having some kind of way to prefix the messages. So this has information in front of it and this has debug because they're all being written to the same place. And these aren't terminating messages that are being sent to standard error. So you'd have to have some kind of a prefix, like this is a debug, this is an informational, and then whatever your message is going to be. But then that at least allows us to get some additional information from the plugin. And then what that looks like in the executor or the exe over here on the right panel, I think if I use this, you could see where I'm at. But right here is all I'm doing. I'll just kind of highlight these lines. This is all the code that I've added here to be able to do that. But I'm just adding in, if there's any errors that came back from the plugin, I'm going to parse them line by line and present them instead of just kind of squashing them and merging them with standard out, which is currently what's going on. And then I just do the case to determine like what was the front of that string of debug and whatnot. So this might be able to be betterly, I don't know, what's the right word? Handled better if we were to use kind of the error types that exist. We could add a custom one in here for plugin information. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. I've talked a little bit. I want to get people's thoughts. Is that Akash kind of said that was kind of what he was thinking about from an experience perspective, but I'm open to feedback on the implementation side if there's a better way to do it or to handle this information coming from the plugin. But yeah.
Thank you, Josh. It's super, super helpful to get information back from the plugin. Just to clarify, on like line 41 or 42, like where we're writing to standard error, it's because, so even though it's information, we're writing to standard error because standard out is taken by the verifier response.
Right. And so I'm also working, I found a way to be able to parse, because JSON is always going to be returned last in the payload if it parsed correctly. So then I'll just assume if there are additional messages, they're going to come before that return. And I can parse it and do the same exact thing that I'm doing here on line 19 on the right panel, where I'm just, reading it in and then outputting them. So I'll be able to handle standard out the same way that I'm handling standard error, essentially. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, there's multiple lines in here. I'm going to output immediately the lines that aren't JSON, and then I'm going to return the JSON, which is that string of bytes that gets pushed into the verify reference function later on. Yep.
Cool. There's a couple of questions in the chat message.
sure.
Bin asked, just trying to scroll back. Bin asked, can we also log info embedded in the context?
Yeah, I remember we had like a trace ID, so this is different for different like requests. So I just wonder if and currently we embedded the trace ID in the context, and all components will log this trace ID for each request. So I just wonder if the external plugins can also log the trace ID.
Oh, there's a trace inside the context?
Yes.
Okay.
We have something in the context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bin, would you be able to link an example where we log the information in the context to Josh?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if I get that, if the plugin is aware of that context tracer, I should be able to send that also to standard out as an informational that we could parse.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
And then I think Sanjay had a question. Do you want to prefix the plugin name as well? Like where would you, in the standard out
It'll say,
message, like put the name of the plugin that it's coming
cosine
from?
plugin.
Oh, okay.
For example.
Yeah, what is the one that's producing these
Oh, sure.
messages, right? I don't know whether it will pollute it. It's subjective, but whatever you find useful is what I would like to do, honestly speaking.
Yeah, we could change this plugin and put the name in there because the plugin itself will be aware of its name being passed in from the skeleton. So we could do that. So instead of this plugin here, it could be plugin hyphen sample cosine.
Yeah,
I think that would be helpful. Go ahead, Akash. You got your hand up.
Oh no, I have a slightly different question, so please finish.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll put that in there and we can discuss it in the next meeting, like what people like, if they want just plug in or if they want the name. We could also just put it as an additional information that's logged, so instead of saying initialize plugin, that could have some more metadata about the name and version and stuff. It's just an informational when debugging or something like that. Cool.
And similarly, Josh, we have in the Ratify core, we log the debug messages based on a feature flag, like if debugging is enabled. So it would be nice to check if we want the debug messages as well.
Okay. I think because I'm returning them with the logress, it will honor that that set that's up above. So if I were to just remove debug here, I shouldn't get those. I don't get debug, but I get informational.
Oh, very nice.
Yep.
Cool. Any other questions?
Not this time, but if anybody has any feedback on the implementation, if there's a little bit better way I can do it, again, that'll probably come at PR time, but yeah, just hit me up and let me know. But hopefully I'll have something working by the end of the week with standard out as well, and then have a PR ready.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I think Josh.
And
Sorry.
go ahead, Akash.
No, I was just gonna say, based off of just two maybe things to look at. Like Binbin mentioned, we have a context logger. It's like a logger package that we've wrapped the loggerus with some extra injecting different context fields like the trace ID, as well as like which component the logs come from. So maybe we can, instead of just using loggerus directly, we can just use that logging package there and its associated debug or info or warning message, and we can get some of that for free. The other thing I wanted to ask is, do you think it's useful if we implement some sort of wrapper logger package for the plugins themselves, so that plugin authors don't have to remember to append info : whatever or debug : it's kind of just a function you invoke saying, hey, I want to do logger.info, and then we know that before it writes it out to the buffer, it's going to append the required prefix needed for the main Ratify process to parse. That just an idea if you're.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because it gets kind of tricky. It depends on how much pretty formatting you want, and then that would replace the kind of the like where I'm replacing the info and stuff like that. That could be hidden in a helper.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'll look into that here. Plug it. Okay, yeah. Put that on the docket. Thanks, Kosh. Appreciate the feedback.
And Josh, we also have a Monday PR and issue triage meeting. If you ever want to block some time to walk through the PR or have like more in-depth discussion,
Okay,
you can always
fantastic.
post a message on the Slack channel.
Okay,
Let
will
me
do.
know if you have issue finding that meeting.
Okay, I think I have it, but yeah, I appreciate the reminder. I'll definitely do that for this issue.
Cool. That's all on our agenda, I think. Anything else people want to share?
Susan, if we don't have anything, maybe we can talk a little bit about what we were discussing earlier this week. Just some general repo hygiene and how we can kind of detect when we've broken end-to-end tests and things like that.
Sure. Go ahead, Akash. Would you like to share screen?
Sure. Give me a second. Let me get set up here.
Akash, before you deep dive into that, I just wanted to bring up, because Yi is on the call, we have been thinking about, as part of the repo hygiene, Ralph actually reached out to me and wanted to kind of find out what is the path for donation to the foundation. So we probably want to start discussing that. I'll let maybe Feynman's dropped, unfortunately, but need some help to kind of pave the way to get this out of the Days Lab org into the proper place. That's a part of this year plan anyway. So you just need to formulate that here.
Thanks, Sajid, for this information.
Yeah. Yeah, Sajay, let us know what we need to gather for the donation. Josh, I think you're the host. Would you be able to pass that on to Akash?
Oh, now I got to figure out how to do that. Let's see.
So you right click and there should be
Make
like
host.
a,
Got it.
yes.
There we go. It's been a long time since I've used Zoom.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, let me know when you can see my screen.
It's up.
Yep, we can see it
Okay,
now.
great. So this is kind of a larger discussion on how do we maintain our end-to-end tests and make sure that after we've merged changes to the main branch, we confirm that those changes haven't like broken some of the extra end-to-end tests that we run only on the main branch. So on the main branch, apart from all the PR tests that we run, we also run a bunch of these AKS end-to-end tests. And what we often run into is that because of version updates or a change to the CI that we missed updating the AKS test, these ones start to fail after we merge to main. But this really isn't caught until someone realizes, oh, this test, we've been getting a lot of red X's on our commits for a while on the main branch. Let me go and check what happened. It seems like if we do get alerted, it kind of gets lost. So let me pull up an example here. This is just one of many that we've had over the last 6 months. But there was you can see over the last like 2 weeks, there was like a string of all these failures. And it turns out that we had kind of one configuration issue with our end-to-end test with the log naming, which caused the AKS end-to-end test to fail. But we didn't realize this was an issue until just this week when we were taking a look at it. So first question is, when we merge to main branch, do folks get an email from GitHub saying that the workflow failed? I personally don't get an email, but I don't know if that's because I filtered the emails out or what's going on. So if others could just kind of chime in here and if they've noticed if they've gotten any emails from GitHub for that.
So I think
Zhang.
I'm also in the same boat, like because it's so noisy, like for every, like someone commented, someone pushed an update, like it's so noisy that I filtered them out as well.
Yeah, same, agreed. It's hard to keep track of what the failure was. And plus, on my personal fork, the tests also run, and I don't know if other folks run into those same problems. So I'll get failures, but it'll be like, oh, the fork version of the test that ran failed. So it adds even more noise to that. So yeah, I don't know if there's a better way to bubble up that, okay, hey, the pipeline is now failing, either via, like, I think Susan, you mentioned maybe there's like a tag that we can add, or if I don't know if they have an alerting system that, hey, the last 3 days your builds have all been failing.
Yeah, I think if you scroll all the way up, there is, see the last, there's like that little banner next to the 724 commits, right? That was showing the status of the last commit. So that little tick, does that mean, I've seen it like red before, and I think now we know if it's red, it means it wasn't successful, the last merge to main.
Yep.
So that's a indicator that we can look for at least. Like I've seen it before, I didn't know what it was for.
Yeah, but it's like,
So
it's
hidden.
quite a small thing, and then
Yep.
we want to be alerted when there's an issue, not, okay, we need to now look for it. That's
Yeah.
my personal opinion. So
Are there any, is it getting triggered in conditions when it's not supposed to run? Like could you constrain when that workflow gets triggered so it, like on the fork, maybe it doesn't get triggered? Are there any way that you could, I guess, what are the conditions where it should run?
yeah, so that's the thing. Right now it's triggered to whenever you merge a commit, so you add a commit on the main branch. But when you have your fork also set up, that's going to have a separate main branch. So unless there's some way where we can manually pin it to, hey, if you're running it on day slabs, that's when we want to do it. Or you in your forks, you kind of have to manually turn that off. I'm sure there's other projects that have run into this, but I feel like we need to find a better way to do it as it is right now. It's just too noisy.
So Akash, if what you're saying is that once the merge happens, what's running after the merge? Is it like a cron test or something? Or how does the error actually happen?
It's through
So
the GitHub Actions.
No, but what is running after merge? Or
so after merge, we run another set of our regular PR tests that we run.
how is that triggered, by the way?
It's triggered by, we have a rule, a branch rule that we've set up for the main branch. And the triggers in the GitHub Actions itself, we have defined that when you merge to main, we want to trigger this particular task.
But this is app happening after it's merged.
Yes.
Interesting.
So what we do right now is if you have a PR, you're going to run a subset, so it's smaller tests. And I put smaller in air quotes because they're actually not smaller, but we run a subset of tests. And then when you merge to the main branch, there's another, we have extra conditions for those extra tasks that are specific only for the main branch. So the AKS tests will only run on the main branch. So when you merge your changes to main, that's when the AKS tests get triggered to run.
Can we use an intermediate branch or something like that, where the tests run and only then the merge to main happens? Like basically, can we change the workflow where the error happens before the merge happens rather than after?
Yeah, that's a good point. We can look into that. So kind of like a staging branch, and then only the staging branch then merges to main. Something
Yeah,
like that.
that needs to pass because if that doesn't pass, then I mean, basically, I think the gate should be before the merge happens.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Um,
We can look into that.
Yeah.
So on the so with the AKS test, we don't run it on the personal PRs because the PR doesn't have the right credential, right? Is that the challenge, Akash?
yeah, because technically the tests are coming from, or the permissions are from your forks branch.
Yep.
So it doesn't have access to the client, the secrets necessary to auth to the subscription. That's why we can't run this prior on your own branch.
Yep. But we can, the intermediate branch is possible. Like we just
Yeah,
have to.
we could do that. We could set up like a staging branch and then have an automated task that after it passes those checks, you could maybe merge the staging to main.
Yep. That's a good idea.
Okay.
We'll look into that. Thanks, Sajay.
If we have a little bit more time, I think the other one we were talking about, Susan, is we run way too many tests on our PR builds. The
Yes,
matrix is now
having the-
exploded. It takes now, I think, 2.5 hours of runner time to actually run all of the tests. We do most
Actually,
of
I
them in
looked
parallel.
at it. It was 4 hours yesterday. Like I looked
Yeah.
at one of the PR where they calculated all of the minutes that it takes to run the whole suite. So we have a 3,000 minutes per month quota of some sort. And Akash and I were looking at it. We don't know if that is a per org quota or a per repository quota. But ideally, we want to stay under the 3,000 minutes that we're getting for free. So we're like, if we want to merge, if every PR takes 300 minutes, then we only get 10 PRs for free a month.
Well, the staging
I-
kind of helps that too, because you could move some of those, like the AKS ones, into the staging and say, okay, well, more the code tests pass in the PR, move to the staging. Staging actually targets Azure.
Yeah, and maybe run through the whole matrix. We have two variables. One is the gatekeeper version and AKS version, right? So we support, we defined 3 n-3. Is that correct, Akash?
I think n-2, right? n-1, n-2. So three versions. So 13.12,
Yes.
13, and 14 right now for gatekeeper. And Kubernetes, we do 1.26 and 1.27. So 3 times 2, 6. And then we also do multiple configurations for some other resources that we support. So we're in total, we run, I think, 20 end-to-end tests, right? Or something like that, which is just a crazy amount. Each one of those takes like 20 minutes, and they spin up like all these resources up and down, up and down. And we do have some flakiness in tests. So if one of those fails, then you have to kind of go in there and manually rerun it. Otherwise, the PR gets blocked from merging. So it's a lot right now.
So should we run on per PR while we are working through the iterations of PR? Should we just run one matrix and then in the staging before it merge, run through the whole matrix?
Yeah, maybe that's we like take the two latest version, like the latest versions, run it. That's the one we run more frequently, and then in the staging one, we'll run the entire matrix for backwards compatibility check before we merge to main. Maybe that's possible. And we can also remove some of the extra tests, like the high availability end-to-end test, and remove that and put that in the staging test too. I know we also have like two versions of the test that run right now. One is like for our
with
config
plugin, one
policy.
without.
Yeah, so
yes.
maybe we also can do something there.
I'll create a tracking issue for this. Yeah, is everyone happy with just running one the latest version on PR? Any feedback on that?
What is the time that we don't want it to be too late before we run the backward compatibility test, but we also don't want to release something without running the backward compatibility test, right? I think that's finding that sweet spot as to how much. I think it's an optimization of how healthy is main, and the goal is that release should always be healthy. So
we'll run the whole suite before the PR merge on staging, but as we are iterating on the PR, we only have the one
main. Okay, one set.
Yeah.
Hi, Susan. I just come up with idea. Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Is it possible that we can set a flag to like block the currently running CIs, and instead we'll have like the personal branch? Was that be count into the total time usage as well? I mean, in our personal repos, we also have the tests.
Yeah, I don't know, Akash. If with the PR, I was saying if it's running, like you're merging from your fork to main, that minutes is counted towards the personal branch or the Ratify quota. Is that the question, Juncheng?
Yeah, exactly. If that's not, we don't have answer right now, I can do some quick search and posting channel.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they calculate that. Yeah.
Yeah, we also don't have a view of like where we're currently at, right, Akash? Like we see the quota, but we don't see any usage.
Yeah, well, I think the only data point we have is that we haven't yet been screamed at about this. I'm assuming we will get that if we go down this road, but yeah. Yeah, if we can like figure out what we are at currently. Maybe we need to talk to Bridget or something to maybe she can tell us about that.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll create a tracking item to start. It's probably, what do you think the priority is, Akash and E? Should we look into this at this milestone?
Susan, do you mean this work for this milestone for the upcoming 1.2?
Yes.
Do we, I mean, if we don't do this based on what Akash described, we may miss some issues, right? From the end-to-end testing point of view. So that means we may need to do some regular manual check, right?
Yeah, maybe the approach we can take is we can separate the two issues out. The build times or the PR test length, we can treat that as like another optimization, and then the staging, pushing the staging first and running the AKS tests there before merging to main. Maybe we can prioritize that, because then at least for that, that's catching any regressions before we have hits the main branch.
Yeah, sounds good. We can put it in the route milestone at the triage meeting, but we'll probably queue it up for this milestone. And just a quick question, E, are we thinking about releasing the patch release in, sorry, when did we last release? December. So 2 months plus December. We're thinking about releasing a patch end of this month or early of February, like just a schedule question.
Yeah, I was also considering this because during the testing we also had the issue that without fixing that issue, so user using 1.1, they will meet some problem that they cannot enable the policy due to the name and the type that the naming issue. So I was also thinking about this. So maybe we can discuss this next week or tomorrow. I'm not sure when Luis will join, so we can align that for the patch release. What's the scope? The work item will be included. So normally it should be some bug fixing, right? There could be some other small improvements that we can consider.
Yep.
So yeah, so yes, we should release a patch. Otherwise, there will be some issue for users using 1.1. But the time and scope we needed to have further discussions.
Yep. Maybe when we next meet, we can create a milestone with the due date for the repository, for the Ratify project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add it to the agenda for next week. Yeah, so we're at time today. Anything else before we wrap up?
No,
Cool.
from my side.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next time.
See everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, folks. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year.